That is such a good reminder, Dave. Whether it's going to be storm surge or rainfall, there is potential areas where, especially low-lying areas or flood-prone areas, they could be covered with water very quickly. It does not matter how high your truck is. Do not attempt to drive through it because it just takes a foot of rushing water to help wash a car away. It does not take much, unfortunately, or to even knock you off your feet. So you don't want to even walk through those flood waters as well. We are looking at the concern for flash flooding when it comes to what is now Tropical Depression 4, and it is expected to eventually strengthen on Saturday night into Sunday to Tropical Storm Debby. That is going to be the next name on the list. That is what you're going to hear us say all weekend long. But right now, Tropical Depression 4 has officially gained those tropical characteristics. We're starting to get that closed low going. And you can kind of see how broad the circulation around this messy disturbance has been, especially as it moved over Cuba, which is, again, very mountainous terrain. The center of it has been kind of wiggling, especially to the southern coast of Cuba here, interacting with a little bit of the Caribbean Sea. Still, you got a very thin island, the sliver of this island that has been battling parts of this storm system from at least intensifying, but it is now officially formed into those tropical characteristics, keeping those maximum sustained wind speeds at 30 miles per hour. But that will change once this navigates its way up towards the eastern Gulf of Mexico tomorrow. Tonight, though, moving to the west-northwest at about 17 miles per hour. So here is what the latest forecast just in from the National Hurricane Center. They are continuing to see this trend more so to the west-northwest. That is going to now have it come into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico on Saturday through the afternoon, and that is where we have prime conditions at very warm Gulf waters, allowing for it to strengthen from a depression to an officially tropical storm. That's when it will get that classification. Debby is on Saturday, and then it will trail its way up towards the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We were saying all day long the potential was it could hug a little bit more of the coastline and have less water interaction to allow it to strengthen, to allow it to intensify. Unfortunately, if we have more now of a westerly track here and more of that potential for the center to stay over the ocean, that allows it to strengthen, and that is now officially one of the highest forecasts we've seen so far with this potential system strengthening is 70-mile-per-hour winds up towards the Big Bend region by the time we get towards late Sunday into early Monday. That would put it very, very close to not only a strong tropical storm, but just below a Category 1 hurricane. So we'll have to watch this change very, very closely, especially as we get towards the end of the weekend. And it will even continue to trek its way to the northeast towards the Carolinas by the middle of next week. But look at these spaghetti plots. These are also brand new. They all trended a little bit more to the west tonight. That trend, that change is basically what the National Hurricane Center was also picking up with their latest models, and that accounts for that shift. So let me take you through our in-house model. This is just showing you we're keeping a depression through tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, and into the evening. We're kind of hanging out into this region, going through early Sunday through the overnight. That's where we have a strengthening tropical storm. That's also when you're going to notice some of those heavier bands starting to make their way up from the south to the north, right along the coastline. That is a surge concern. That is very, very heavy rainfall. And the northeastern quadrant of the center of the system is the one that not only has some of those strongest winds, but that has the greatest tornado threat. So we're definitely going to be looking for some isolated spin-ups in this region throughout parts of your Sunday, possibly as early as the overnight hours, but really going into the bulk of your Sunday as this continues to pull its way. This center, at least on this model, is trying to favor more so just north of Citrus County, more so into parts of the Nature Coast and the Big Bend. The spaghetti plots begin kind of really favoring more so towards the Big Bend east of the Panhandle. So we have still a little bit of uncertainty in the long range. The big picture will be the changing forecast on just how much of those tropical storm force winds we could feel, which the strongest, I will tell you now, with the center possibly staying more to the west, that will keep the strongest of the winds more offshore. And that will keep us here locally dealing with still some gusty winds that will be coming through, but the strongest staying over open water. And you'll notice those tropical storm watches, that's why we have them in place, because we could be looking at times sustained wind speeds getting close to 39 miles per hour or higher. But for the most part, that will possibly be more rounds of those bands that will bring some of those gusts in place, with storm surge concern also along the coast. Primarily 2 to 4 feet that we'll be watching for our local neighbors. That puts a lot of rain as well. When you're talking about, again, all that wind and then those bands of wind throwing all this rain on top of us, 4 to 8 inches Also, some primary impacts that we're going to be watching out for that could cause a flash flood threat, especially when you have these rounds training over the same regions Saturday night through all day Sunday and even now parts of our Monday. So that is why we have a weather impact alert day through the whole weekend. Changes are already happening and changes will continue. So make sure you stay tuned with us.